Welcome back. It's 7 minutes after 8 p.m. and it's time for the Tech Talk Part 1. Tonight we're talking about the advantages and disadvantages of going off the grid. And we speak to founder of Sunship Technologies, Ralph Berold, to give us a bit more on exactly the pros and cons of this type of venture if you do go about it. Ralph, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Safaraz. Great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Awesome stuff. Great to have you with us, and thanks for obviously taking the time. You're obviously the founder, first things first, of Sunship Technologies, right? Obviously, we know now Eskom is, continuously running with blackouts, etc. For those who don't know about Sunship Tech, exactly what you guys do, explain exactly who you are and what you're all about.
Sure, great. Thank you. So Sunship Technologies is a small company we started just before lockdown. We actually launched around this time last year. You remember what else happened around this time last year? COVID became a big deal in our lives, and
Level 5, yeah.
yeah, it was hectic. So that was our first year of business. You can imagine we did some business at the end of the year, and but it was tough, and it was a tough environment to work in. But basically, Sunship Technologies, it's a new company we founded, and we focus on quality solar photovoltaic and also energy storage. So both products and services, and we're starting to look at financing those as well. And basically, what we do is we focus on the residential market and how to provide products and value services which really give value for money for customers. And we focus on residential customers. I come from more of a utility solar background on commercial and utility scale. But I decided when starting this company, I wanted to focus on residential on smaller scale and actually be able to talk directly to customers, about the products and about the value of solar.
Now you're basically taking this directly to the houses, to people, ground level, not to corporates and commercials, as you say. You mentioned, obviously, you've got different types of storages. We're talking about batteries. I presume, obviously, it's solar powered. For those who don't know exactly much about how this all works, now we want to talk about the pros and cons. Obviously, you offer innovative solar and energy storage products, as I understand, right? Are your products standalone, basically, that have been pre-engineered for your house, or how does this all work? Basically, is each house custom designed, or is there like a standard system that you have?
Yeah. So we look. I mean, solar is not rocket science. It is possible to to do all the research and to do it yourself. We feel that we've learned a lot in the last few years, and are able to package technology in a way that's easier to install and makes sense for the average South African and house owner. And basically what we are doing is we're putting together products. I come from the solar panel side of things, where I know a lot about solar panels. So we can sell solar panels. We put them into kits. We can put them as rooftop kits. We've also developed a carport type of structure, which is basically a standalone steel, and we're going to make a wooden version of this structure, which actually suspends
the solar. One that's called the power port or the power roof you're talking about?
Yeah. So the power port is the structure which we've developed from scratch. And it's the idea there is that you don't have to use the roof, and there's certain advantages not using the roof. You don't have to worry about waterproofing the roof and insurance and those kind of things. And basically it's easy to install and easy to take down if you wanted to move your property, etc. So
I must say it looks very savvy. I mean, looking at this one that's on the site here on suntech.com, looking at it, it looks very presentable. I want to talk about pricing structure. Now, obviously, each home would differ. What are the average prices for somebody who's wanting to go off the grid? I mean, I'm sure going to be costly depending on your liquidity and your size of your home. But what are some of the contributing factors one should consider?
Well, let's talk about what you mean by off the grid, because this is the key question. I think that off the grid, the spirit of going off the grid is a good one, in the sense that you're building the resilience to power your own energy and to be more independent. But I wouldn't recommend typically going off the grid if you're in a suburban environment, or in a township for that matter, where there is access to the grid. And what I would recommend, and I do that with my customers, is that they do generate solar on their own property, and even they can store the energy in battery storage, and good quality batteries like lithium. But basically they use the grid when it's available, like at nighttime, or if there's something they need which is a large electrical load, they can use the grid. So they keep the connection, but then also use the connection so they can start to generate energy for the grid, right? So we as consumers become producers of energy. And this is the model around the world which is happening, and actually the least cost approach, which is to start generating power for the grid, and then they start to pay you for that, right? But the main business case is actually not buying so many units as you would have from the council, because you're now generating your own units. So you can go completely off the grid. That's another story. Then you have to start to reduce your consumption entirely. You have to change things like your oven and stove and all the rest. It can be quite an expensive exercise. And that's what I said in the original article, which is some people are a bit confused by. But there's also a philosophical issue which we could talk about, which is does it make sense to actually leave the grid, right? If you're on a farm or in a rural place where an Eskom connection is really
scarce,
difficult, or expensive, to do, then I'd say sure. And I've done some projects like that on a farm. We can do that. We have some products like that. But typically, the most cost-effective and efficient way of doing this is to change your relationship with the grid, in the sense that you can now start producing your own energy and store it when necessary, and you can actually give that to the grid and support the grid further, and transition the entire grid as you're part of it into a new, cleaner future for the country.
Now, you're mentioning obviously clean energy, and we're looking at ways of obviously trying to do that. And you obviously offer a variety and a means of doing so. Now, you mentioned there are three kinds of obviously solar systems for residents, right? For residential solar systems: solar feed-in, solar hybrid, and a full off-grid system, right?
Yes.
Basically, your solar feed-in would basically be is just reducing your monthly energy costs, but also hedging your load shedding, or how is this going to work? Let's say I want to just break this down for people so they understand exactly.
Sure thing. So feed-in system, let's say with no batteries, this is the first scenario, is one where you're producing your own energy through solar panels on your roof, or on a carport or something like that, on your property, and you connect it to the distribution board of your house. What you do typically is you apply for a two-way connection with the council. Now, most municipalities in this country are going that direction. I know, most of the munis are going that way. And what they do is they install a two-way meter, so that they will continue to charge you at a similar rate as you would have been buying. In some cases, in Cape Town here, it's like R2.70 right now. Can be as high as that. And then on the way in, they will also credit you for units that you produce. They won't give you R2.70, unfortunately. In Cape Town, it's about 95 cents. But then that's a credit against your bill.
I think would work differently, right?
Exactly. But the principle is there. And like I said, the main savings doesn't really come so much as the cost that they will pay you. It's the reduced cost that you don't have to buy so many units, but the grid is available when you need it. For example, at nighttime, you don't have the sun available, and you don't have storage in this scenario, so then you want to use the grid at night when we mostly use electricity, right? So, and then you could do things like shifting your load. So, for example, your main appliances, etc., move them into the middle of the day when you're producing your own energy, and that also is more efficient. So that's the first scenario, right? The second scenario is a hybrid scenario where you are still grid connected, and you're still doing, like I said, feeding into the grid. But you also have a battery system in your home, so that when the grid fails, and it is going to increasingly fail, right, in the next 10 years, because of the reality of the Eskom, then you have power available to you in the form of battery storage, and you can power part of your load on that. So what we typically do is we split the distribution board into essential and non-essential sections, and obviously the essential sections are where you want to keep the the lights on, the electronics, and any other critical systems, maybe
For the
security,
necessity.
your gate,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah, but you wouldn't put your kitchen items on that. You can often put like refrigeration on that system, etc. So that's a hybrid system. So now you grid connected, you're feeding in when necessary, when it makes sense to do that. You're taking when necessary, and you have the backup facility. And then a full off-grid system would be the last scenario, right? Now
Right.
you can do full off-grid in two ways. One would be the very expensive way. You keep your house,
Okay.
and you try and take everything off grid, and you try and power everything with solar and batteries. It's a difficult and expensive task, right?
I'm sure. Yeah.
And some people are doing that. I wouldn't recommend that typically. I would go for the second option there under off-grid system, which is reduce change your appliances, put LED lights, change your cooking and to gas, and use solar water heating, and then start to look at how you can completely be off grid in terms of electronics, lighting, etc. So if people want to do that, by all means, but you should do that in a smart way rather than spending a huge amount of money, which is it's easy to do.
I'm sure it's quite costly, definitely so. Now, I want to just highlight exactly in terms of your systems, in terms of kilowattages, right? What are the variants that they come in? I mean, we're talking maybe 2 kilowatts for, I don't want to get too deep, too technical for those who don't have an understanding, but just the idea.
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, it is a bit difficult, but let's get into it. Typically, we sell in 2 kilowatt sizes, which multiples of actually 2.2 kilowatts, and we're going to. So we sell 2.2, 4.4, 8.8, and larger if necessary. And basically that 2.2 kilowatts is 6 panels. And so we can go for 6, 12, 24 panels. That's typically how we are selling.
Right.
And then so that's the solar portion. It's called measured in kilowatts or in panels.
So I want to just come in there, Ralph, for a moment. So in South Africa, basically, in terms of solar radiation, right? What's the minimum requirement that we'll need to get maybe about 10, 15 kilowatt hours or per day, or your average daily consumption? How much do you think we'll need?
Right. So then we have to understand the difference between the solar capacity, which let's say it's 2.2 kilowatts and 6 panels, and the amount of energy that will produce in a given day. Right. Now remember that's going to change in winter and summer. It's going to change if it's a cloudy day or if it's a sunny day, etc. So on average, if we look at the simulation, on average, we according to our numbers, we can produce about 10 units on average for 2.2 kilowatts of installed capacity. That's 6 panels on the roof. On average during the year, you'll get about 10 units per day. Now, obviously, if you're in Durban, there's a lot of cloud cover. It'll be reduced, but if you're in a sunny place, it'll be higher. So that's on average. So that's quite a lot of power. 10 units per day. I mean, my house, which is there's 3 of us. It's a couple bedrooms. That's about 50% of our power. So effectively, that's be able to reduce our bill by half. So then you can start to see the savings, right? So that starts.
Well, I
to
mean,
show
there you're obviously complementing obviously a long term. You're not supplementing for a short term solution. You know what I mean? Now, in terms of obviously that, Ralph, what you were talking about, obviously the kilowattages and the basics, right? And you mentioned obviously the full off grid system. Now, in terms of designing your own, a custom built one, how would I go about doing this? In terms of obviously earlier on you mentioned the power port, which is basically, do I need to have a roof mounted or a ground mounted panel or a power port system?
Yeah. And that's a key decision is where do you want to put the solar, right? So do you have a roof that is conducive to solar? So some considerations is you have a roof that you can affix something onto. It's obviously metal roofs are easier than tiles, I'll be honest. You have to make sure that that can be done, so the waterproofing is not an issue. I mean, we have this a carport effectively where you don't have to worry about all that. And then also, for example, it obviously needs to be in a sunny place. It can't have a tree right next to it that's casting shade over it, or another part of the building. So it doesn't always have to be entirely north facing. It can be east or west facing, or etc. South facing, not so great. So then think about your property in terms of where on the property gets a lot of sun, and where's a structure you could use, or where there's a space you could put up something, and then you can start from there. Then you can think about, okay, that size, we could do maybe 6 panels or 12 panels there. Right. Panels are bigger than one expects. Actually, we have very high performance panels which are 2 by 1 meters, quite large.
Okay.
So usually one sort of underestimates how much space you need, and then you want to make a structure that's strong, and then in terms of the power electronics underneath that, then you can either, as I said, go for a feed-in system, which is basically a grid-tied inverter, and there's different kinds of inverters on the market, different quality and different prices. And then you need the right meter, you need the data monitoring system, etc. And you can get into the stuff. People that are technically minded will enjoy it. Actually,
I see my background teammates and controllers obviously losing track of what we are saying, but let's shed some light to them and give them some solar energy here. Ralph, now obviously, in conclusion, your business and your entity obviously offering these type of solutions. Sunshiptech.com. I want my engineer to just put this up on our page as well. And the viewers and listeners can go on there and check why go solar. You can create your own electricity, reduce your own utility bill, as Ralph mentioned, and lead the transition to a green economy. Wouldn't you agree?
All right. Yeah, sure. And I wanted to make the point about the social impact. All right. Okay. Of going this route. I mean, we know the advantages, the economic advantages are clear, and even environmental benefits are clear, right? We're leaving a better future for our children. But from a social perspective, my view, and you can disagree with me, and people do, is that it doesn't make sense to completely leave the grid. We still use public services. We use water, we use roads, etc. And it would not make sense for us to absolutely leave the grid. Maybe we should be part of the transition, or helping the grid transition to what we want it to look like in the future. Yes. I mean, Eskom gets a lot of bad press, and for good reason, right? But they're also doing good things. They're procuring renewable energy, wind and solar, they're actually very good at certain things. Lightning protection they're world leaders in terms of lightning. So I think one has to see this as a very difficult time. And we have to get through it. Like, how are we going to get through it? Are we going to do it by ourselves and not worry about our neighbors and our fellow South Africans, or are we going to do it together? So that's my point.
For the greater good, as they would say. For the greater good. Ralph, we thank you so much for your time tonight. However, we're obviously going to put up the website. I'm going to get my engineer, sunshiptech.com. Guys, go check this out. Get in touch with Ralph Berold, who's the founder of Sunship Technologies. Ralph, we thank you so much for your time tonight.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much. Salam alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Have a great weekend, man. So there you go. We're talking about going off the grid, not off your head, and the pros and cons of obviously if you are looking at going off the grid as a solution, what you should consider. And Ralph gave us a wealth of experience in that regard. It's now 27 after 8. When we come back, we carry on with Tech Talk Part 2. We're talking about how easy it is to get hacked in South Africa with Jan van Marlen.